Well, some of you may have seen it and some of you haven't, but back in 2019, I did a 50th anniversary of the Apollo program, four-part series for Daily Wire called Apollo 11, What We Saw. I think it's the best work I ever did, and it's impossible to watch that without feeling the love and affection I had for NASA in the 1960s, and I've lost that love and feeling. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. The good news is it looks like Butch and Sunny are safely back on Earth. Better news, they came down on a very reliable, virtually unheard of, inexpensive vehicle called the Dragon, which is a privately owned space capsule. The government subsidized NASA Boeing Starliner capsule that they went up on, which had been delayed again and again and again, was deemed unsafe for return after billions and billions of dollars of spending on a capsule. A capsule. This is what we did rather well back in 1966, I guess, for the redesign of the Apollo command module. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, by the way. The current plans for manned spaceflight, as far as NASA is concerned, consists of the following. We're going to create the Starliner capsule so that we have a second way to get to the space station. That was jettisoned from the space station as space junk, re-entered the atmosphere, had some problems, was deemed unsafe for human spaceflight after God knows how much money and years and overruns and so on. NASA also has plans to go back to the moon with the Artemis program, which probably should have been called the Dionysius program, because they are having a bit of a problem. They sent an unmanned Orion capsule, which is also looks like was built by apes when compared to just the Dragon capsule that SpaceX put out. And there's plans for a 4-person crew to go next year, April of 2026, on a mission around the moon, this time manned mission on what the capsule previously did. But here's the kicker, Steve. They can go around the moon in Artemis, but they can't land there because the Artemis program doesn't have a lander. In order to land on the moon, Artemis will have to fly their Artemis capsule to lunar orbit, where they will transfer aboard a Starship to make the actual landing, which is kind of like getting out of a DC-3 and walking into a 787 in order to fly that final leg from Los Angeles to Bakersfield. So my point in all of this is that I think DOGE has some fairly low-hanging fruit to cut when it comes to NASA. The Artemis launches are actually better than I do on the SLS, the Space Launch System, otherwise known as the Senate Launch System, with $2 or $3 billion per launch or something.
$4 billion per launch, and that's just the hardware, right. And it doesn't include any development costs.
And folks, just so you understand, for those of you not up on the inside baseball of this, the Artemis program has managed to take reusable engines that were used on the space shuttle and throw them into the Atlantic 4 at a time. That's the level of genius that we found ourselves with the government program. Isn't it time to put a stop to all of this nonsense, Steve? I mean, really.
It is. There are so many things we can be, should have already done in space, particularly regarding the moon, that we haven't done because of money, because we're wasting the damn money. Although, before I get into all that, let me just... I swear I would never do this, but I have to do it. I have to say one thing in defense of Starliner. It was not actually subsidized. It was a fixed price contract to develop this capsule. The promise being that NASA wanted 2 companies to build capsules to go to the space station and back. And so they gave SpaceX one sum of money and they gave Boeing another sum of money. Boeing got more money because they were the more reliable partner at the time. Mm-hmm. And they each developed their own capsule. Crew Dragon for SpaceX, Starliner for Boeing. And because it was fixed price, Boeing has lost at least so far $1.6 billion on Starliner, because the promise was you'll develop this on your own budget, hopefully, but then you will get, I think it was up to a dozen missions to the space station and back, and that's where you would make your money. Well, Boeing still hasn't completed a paid mission with Starliner to the space station.
Boo-hoo.
That was just a flight test they did with Butch and Sunny. They weren't paid for that. That came out of their own pocket. Wow. So I don't know how much money they've lost on Starliner now, but it looks like it will never complete a paid crewed mission to the ISS.
Well, if you can't build a steel triangle that holds air pressure, then maybe you're not trying hard enough.
And that's the thing. We've been making space capsules for 60 years. This is a 60-year-old technology that Boeing, with a couple of $1 billion, couldn't perform. What's happened to this company is sad, and what's sadder is we need a Boeing in this country. Yeah. Something's got to turn around
absolutely.
there.
Yes, absolutely.
I want Boeing to succeed.
Me too.
Don't get me wrong.
Me too.
So the whole problem with Artemis, putting it very simply, is the SLS, the Senate Launch System. It is essentially a Saturn V made out of Frankenstein parts. And the problem with Saturn V is that it could only get that tiny little ship and service module to the moon. And a service module and command module to the moon, just enough to get 3 guys around the moon, 2 guys on the moon for a very short stay, and then bring them home. Well, what we're trying to do is build a permanent presence on the moon. And you can't do that with an Apollo-size rocket. You need a lot more oomph to make a permanent presence on the moon, just to get enough stuff there and the people there. And SLS can't do that. SLS is just Saturn V. So we have the wrong rocket to do it. So, okay, we need Starship. Starship isn't ready, so we're going to do this even more Frankenstein thing, where, as you said, the SLS gets the capsule there, and then they meet up with the lander, which is Starship, basically. It's a Starship lander.
Which is like 35 times the size of the capsule, you know? I mean,
yeah.
It's madness.
They fly up there in a dinghy, and then they board a luxury yacht.
That's right. And presumably they come back in the dinghy, right?
Yes, and the dinghy costs $4 billion, and the luxury yacht costs a few tens of millions.
What could go wrong? It's genius.
So, the wrong-headedness, Bill, the absurdity. I mean, this is something out of a Douglas Adams novel. But it's our space program. So nobody knows space like Elon Musk, except maybe for, I've just forgotten his name. Isaacson is Trump's pick to be the new NASA chief. He hasn't been approved yet. I think
Jared.
It's Jared Isaacman, who has actually been to space.
Yeah.
He's performed a spacewalk, the first private spacewalk ever. Between these two, they can clean up NASA. We can get to the moon, we can get to Mars, and we can do it faster and at a fraction of the cost of the Senate launch system and this double Frankenstein creature that NASA has put together.
Yeah, Scott, we talked about this a little bit before, but it bears repeating for people who may not have seen it. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration evolved out of the National Advisory Committee of Aeronautics, NACA. And NACA was pure research. All of the airplane wing designs, the airfoils that we use on a daily basis, were just done from pure research done by NACA. So NASA was always essentially a government regulatory and coordination agency that was suddenly handed the job of becoming an airline. Now, if you think about it, if we were to fly the FAA airline, we would be flying in a 4-engine propeller-driven wood-framed airplane at 6,000 feet. It would take us 12 hours to go from Los Angeles to New York, and it costs $7,000 a ticket. So it's time and pastime to get NASA out of the airline or space line business and back into pure research. I do think, in fact, I was talking about DOGE at NASA. I would not mind seeing NASA's budget being maintained. I just don't think any of it should be spent on manned spaceflight. When you think about what NASA is able to do with its the budgets we have for stellar exploration, when you realize how much of NASA's budget, the billions and billions that gets sucked into these horrifically outdated and obsolete manned spaceflight technologies, we could really put out 70, 100 probes for what we're spending. Now we can do some real science. And I think there is a place for that kind of foundational work as a legitimate expenditure of the government.
You know, I just watched the Crew Dragon 10 capsule launch the other day to go up and dock with the International Space Station and bring back Butch and Sunny. And it struck me, they had two announcers on the live feed that I was watching for the launch, both women, one of them wearing like what looked like a surgical, jacket or doctor's jacket with a patch that said NASA on it, and this other person a little more casually dressed. And I felt like they should introduce themselves. And, the one lady would go, "Hi, I'm Julie. I'm from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration." And the other woman would go, "Hi, I'm Debbie. I'm from the company that takes NASA to space." I mean, it
brings it back again.
Harsh but true.
It seems so weird just to see that, and honestly, if NASA doesn't get this figured out on behalf of the federal government of the United States of America, I'm pretty sure Texas is ready to claim the moon for itself. I mean, they put the Firefly Blue Ghost lander on the moon within the last couple of weeks. SpaceX does a lot of its launches, most of its launches, I think, out of Texas, and has a big headquarters here. It seems like Texas is the only entity that's really serious about
Innovative Machines is from Texas too, aren't they? They've done the two landers that fell over, but those.
It's basically one of our colonies already. Like, it belongs to Texas, and with your
it's the Lone Star moon.
That's right. With your description of Starliner as basically the puddle jumper that you fly from the regional airport to get to the big city airport, so that you can then go where you want to go, everything just seems crazy. I mean, you had one job, Boeing, and that was keep the livable atmosphere inside the capsule. That's all we really need you to do. And it shows up at ISS leaking like a sieve, apparently.
Well, it was the thrusters that were leaking some fuel, not the oxygen.
Good.
Thank goodness.
So they just had holes. They were just leaking fuel.
No, it was a perfectly maintained atmosphere. It was just completely out of control.
That's right. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it was just fuel.
Nothing to worry about.
But anyway, so, I think they would do better. NASA's would be, Bill has said this before, they do a better job just running contests. They should basically take the government funding that's going to NASA and offer prizes for people who can do various
because that draws in private
levels
capital.
of accomplishment.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it's Charles Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic solo in a plane because of a contest. And a lot of other people were trying at the same time. And that kind of thing really fosters enthusiasm. They found that if you have a high dollar contest, Peter Diamandis talks a lot about this in his books. He was the guy who was the founder of the X Prize.
X Prize.
What's that?
The X Prize,
yes.
Which Burt Rutan won in 2004.
Yeah. And so the idea basically is they found that people will spend more money than the prize to win the prize.
That's right.
So they will go out there and they will burn the midnight oil, and they will find the best engineers who are willing, to basically pay their own way to work for this company in order to achieve this goal. And that will just bust open new opportunities for everybody. So NASA would be much better off just to run contests. There could be one guy. Like, he doesn't even need a whole office building. He could just have like a little basement office in the White House or something, and he could just be dreaming up contest ideas and putting that out there. I am so excited about what's going on in space, and even though we kind of make fun of the failures in this situation, in the long haul, I think this will all be seen as part of the various mistakes that you have to make in order to accomplish anything great, and lessons will be learned, like launch cadence by SpaceX has made the difference, and that's why Blue Origin and Starliner have been dogging it, because they just haven't tried it often enough.
Yeah, there's been a number of people, myself included, who look at the history of space exploration and break it down into Space Age 1 and Space Age 2.
Yeah.
Space Age 1 was all of the large government programs, the United States versus the Soviets, big efforts with billions of dollars spent by governments coordinating into one particular platform mission. And Space Age 2, of course, is much more diverse, is much more, it's essentially all private. It's much more efficient. And I thought I'd close this segment because they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So here's a little photo I put together for you. On the left there is the Mercury spacesuit. which is, I think, without question, the coolest looking spacesuit that's ever been built or designed by anybody. The Mercury suit is tight fitting. It's fantastic. It was in use in the early 1960s. Next to it is the Apollo suit, the actual moon suit. You can see how bulky that is. Next to that is the blue Boeing suit that Butch and Sunny are wearing. And then on the right is the SpaceX spacesuit. And clearly, one of these suits looks like it's from the 21st century. Last time I checked, we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century. It's about time we started playing ball like that's where we belong. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.
Quarter of the way through.
And Slate.
Insights.
I just hope that everybody who is pulling Butch and Sunny out of that capsule later today puts on an ape mask.
Damn you.
You blew it up.
Yeah, they should. The first thing they should see is the Statue of Liberty with like just one
Yeah,
arm
the
sticking out of
side.
the ground.
Yeah, they just hold up a big poster of the Statue of Liberty on the crooked on the side. Like, you blew it up. Okay, here we go. End slate in 3, 2, 1.